anybody that was peaceful, I don't think should have been charged. I don't understand why they were charged, because they peacefully were escorted actually by the police officers. And there are plenty of videos, I don't think videos can really lie, of people peacefully entering into the Capitol building, which is, by the way, a public building, and there are public tours in there.
Today is the 6th of January, 4 years on from the riot, the protest in the Capitol building. Can I just get your reflections, your thoughts on that event 4 years ago?
Yes, Stephen, I think there's lots of angles to this. On the one side, you have the deep state now really backed into a corner, because so much has recently been revealed. Many of the reports that initially came out, we know to not be, let's just suffice it to say, quite accurate. So there's been a lot more revealed. I would say, on the one hand, violence in any instance is not acceptable. But exercising one's free speech certainly is not only an American right. Of course, we get that from the greatest of all, Great Britain and our ancestors that brought those values here. So it depends which side you're on. What I'd like to just do is stick to some facts and point viewers to a few things. I do recommend looking at Steve Baker, who was a journalist, an independent journalist, like many of the independent journalists, just there, Stephen, just to cover the events of the day. He was reporting for the blaze, and he was just later arrested. The SWAT team arrived at his home or office, I believe it was, and they arrested him. I mean, it's just really kind of bizarre, to say the least. And then you can look at other facts, like the police officer who was shot there, Ashli. She was a former military. She'd been in the military for many years, and the officer that shot her, Officer Bird, shot her as somebody who, number one, had been viewed and had many reports on his record about being irresponsible, like leaving his gun in the visitors center for hours on end, not passing the regular tests that he should have done. And he was allowed to be there that day on the police side, and she was unarmed. She was not even, he didn't even recognize her as a woman. He didn't know she was a woman. He didn't wait that long. She wasn't threatening anybody. So I think there's many ways to look at this, Steve, and I think a lot of this depends on what facts people tend to want to look at.
And do you think that Trump should pardon those people who were prosecuted following the January 6th riot and protests? Because I think hundreds of people have been sent to prison, or at least prosecuted, convicted over this violent disorder.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. There have been hundreds. Actually, I don't know the exact number. I wish that I did. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number, but you're right about it being hundreds. What I would say is anybody that was peaceful, I don't think should have been charged. I don't understand why they were charged, because they peacefully were escorted actually by the police officers. And there are plenty of videos, I don't think videos can really lie, of people peacefully entering into the Capitol building, which is, by the way, a public building, and there are public tours in there a lot of the time during the year. So I don't think about them. I will say, like any large crowd and like any event en masse, I do believe some people did get out of control, and there was some violence. So somebody that was violent, there's no, as I mentioned earlier, there's no excuse for violence, I don't believe, and think in any instance. So perhaps those, and that's not for me to pass the judgment. That would be case-by-case basis.
But looking at the Democrat response to January 6th, they set up this committee in Congress. And a lot of people have criticized that committee as basically being a kangaroo court and politicizing this whole process. Many Republicans say that people have been persecuted for simply supporting President Trump. As you say, many of these people simply just walked through the Capitol, didn't commit any kind of violence. Do you feel that the Democrats took a political advantage of this, using lawfare, using this committee in Congress? And should there be any repercussions for that?
Well, yes, absolutely, Stephen. And to me, everything should be about parity. All right. So if somebody was walking through the Capitol building, they were then prosecuted. But what about those people? And certainly we saw it because we were all locked down during COVID and everybody saw it. All of those people, the arsonists that violently broke into buildings, were burning down buildings during the BLM riots and the George Floyd riots. Now, I'm not getting this into a racial debate and what's right and wrong. I'm just saying parity. If you're going to if everybody that breaks in anywhere should be arrested, then everybody in the BLM riot should have been arrested because they set buildings on fire, they were arsonists. So this is the issue. What about the parity here? And of course, some people would say, well, it was the capital of the United States, but as I mentioned, there are public tours there. One thing that's interesting, and I would point you to, and our viewers, is that Judicial Watch, a organization here, has actually filed a $30 million lawsuit on behalf of the family of Ashli, the police officer, the military lady who was shot by Officer Byrd. That $30 million lawsuit will be going to court in July of 26 next year. That's a lawsuit that, when I mentioned about sort of the deep state being backed into a corner, they have uncovered a lot of the evidence in this case. And so now, to answer your question in another way, which is, let's look at the result of that lawsuit and see the facts that they have brought to bear in that case, about not only Ashli, who was peaceful, but the many other hundreds of people, you're right, that were peaceful.
And what do you say to the Democrat perspective on this, that this was the darkest day ever in American democracy? This was President Trump trying to overturn the election result, essentially trying to be a dictator, and his supporters violently destroying the Capitol, a sacred building for American democracy, and apparently going after Democrat lawmakers and so on. How do you respond to this argument that actually January the 6th was the darkest day perhaps ever in American democracy?
Well, I would urge those people to actually read the transcript of what President Trump said. His exact words in the transcript were, "Go peacefully." That's exactly what he said. So I would urge people to read those transcripts. Don't go to any filters or look at a news source or a bias. Just go directly to the source and read the transcripts. And if you see anything in there where President Trump urged anybody to be violent, he didn't. I think the error here is two things. I think that it's mainly that any mass crowd, you're going to get disruptors in any mass crowd. That's number one. And so it got out of hand. And that number two, and I was working in Washington, D.C., actually I was going into media studios during the BLM riots, and I saw all the buildings boarded up and a lot of protection everywhere. There wasn't any protection. There wasn't the National Guard. So there was a failure on the terms of the police. I believe that there were police officers who were just told just to stand by. They were, as I mentioned earlier, there is video of them escorting them into the office building. And I think that that's a very important fact to look at as well.
You talk about the BLM riots. It's an interesting comparison. Do you think that the people who committed the terrible acts burning down America's huge cities, do you think that they face the same level of justice as those who went into the Capitol building on January the 6th, 2021?
Well, I'm not an expert on that, but I have not heard of any lawsuits. I have not seen mass incarcerations or arrests. Absolutely not. Now, maybe there are, maybe I'm unaware of them, but no, I have not seen that in the media. I do a lot of research, a lot of reading, and I have not seen nor heard any of that. What I will say, I will add though, is that, when you talk about who are these people, the FBI was asked flat out, did you have any FBI agents amongst the crowds there on January 6th? And Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, said no. Now, they didn't actually have FBI agents. What they had, though, they had these informants. They had people, there's an exact term for it, and it's called, what is it? It's confidential informants. Yeah. That's right. Yes, sorry. Yes, I had to write that one down because I'm not used to that term. I've never heard it before, actually. Confidential informants. Now, who are these people, Stephen? They are people who've actually normally often been arrested on some other charge. The FBI has something against them, and they basically give a sort of a deal to them. And they say, they're basically pressured, and they say, look, you've just committed this crime, or, you've done something dastardly. Now what we're going to do, we're going to give you the opportunity to work for us. So they put them amongst the crowd, and definitely later on it has come out, and that's part of that Judicial Watch case, which is why that's going to be very interesting to no pun intended, watch that case.
Thank you for watching this video. If you want to watch more content, please subscribe to our new GBN America YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.